Portland, Oregon occupies a special place in the hearts of urbanists across America. While other cities are investing in highway expansion and urban sprawl, Portland is implementing urban growth boundaries, constructing a world-class light rail system, and is investing heavily in urban renewal and transit-oriented development projects. So I'm happy to report that one of America's best urban rail systems is getting even better. And because we're in Portland after all, it's getting a little weirder too. Yes, Portland is getting a new streetcar. Well, kinda. See, Portland initially identified its Montgomery Park neighborhood as a first priority corridor in their 2009 streetcar system concept plan, marking it as an urgent and strategically important area for near-term light rail investment. In effect, the Montgomery Park corridor has been elevated above other potential expansion areas thanks to its strong potential to support housing, jobs, and transit-oriented development. So while a new streetcar line in Montgomery Park has actually evolved into a new streetcar extension, the fact still remains. Portland is making its streetcar system more accessible and in an area that could certainly use it. If you're unfamiliar with the area, Montgomery Park is located in Portland's Northwest Industrial District and is often characterized by its iconic namesake office building, which we'll get to in just a moment. While it's not an official neighborhood just yet, the redevelopment project centered around the new streetcar extension certainly aims to change that. To the uninitiated, the Montgomery Park area might seem like nothing more than an abandoned industrial zone, full of unused warehouses, vacant office buildings, and underdeveloped land parcels. It's only when you begin to dig a little deeper into the history here that you realize how important this part of the city really is, and how much potential it has to become Portland's latest slice of urban excellence. And with the city's track record of implementing this kind of transit-oriented redevelopment, I'm pretty excited to watch it unfold. So excited that I hopped on a plane and went to see it for myself. I was able to walk the entire path of the planned streetcar extension route, and I'll be the first to say that this area wasn't anything like I expected it to be. From the decades-old defunct rail tracks, to the curious case of Portland's most iconic office building, to the forgotten history of world's fairs, filled-in lakes, and baseball stadiums, this small section of Portland's Northwest Industrial District is so much more than meets the eye. So let's explore the Montgomery Park area plan in person and on paper, right here from 4th Place. Your place to learn about US geography, urbanism, transportation, and city planning. So as mentioned, the new line is categorized as an extension in the Portland Bureau of Transportation's Montgomery Area Transportation Plan, adopted in December of 2024, meaning this route will actually be a part of Portland's North-South, or NS, streetcar line. Today, this line runs from South Lowell and Bond in the South Waterfront neighborhood to 23rd and Marshall in the Nob Hill neighborhood, via downtown, the Pearl District, and Slabtown. Needless to say, the line is already doing a lot, and it's about to get even busier. Right now, the NS streetcar approaches Nob Hill westbound along Northrop Street, turns south down 23rd Avenue, makes a stop at 23rd and Marshall, and turns back eastbound along Lovejoy Street. The new extension will change this completely, and instead of the streetcar turning south on 23rd, it'll make its way north, along an entirely new set of tracks. It'll first make a stop at Raleigh Street, continue north to Roosevelt Street, make a stop at 25th Avenue, turn down 26th Avenue, turn eastbound down Wilson Street, make another stop between 26th and 25th Avenues, continue south back down 23rd Avenue, make one final stop at Raleigh Street, and continue south to 23rd and Marshall, where it will connect with the pre-existing alignment. Quite the detour for the north-south line. Not terrible, but easily adding another 5 to 15 minutes to an already pretty slow and lengthy street-running light rail service. I do feel like this should have been a separate line on its own, but before I make any firm judgments, I think it's best if I put my boots on the ground and explore this thing. So our journey begins here, where the city plans to lay new northbound tracks starting at 23rd and Northrop. In order to accommodate the new extension, the city will likely have to build a Y-junction, which will end up looking something like this. New tracks will be laid through this entire stretch of 23rd Avenue northbound. Here in Nob Hill, the streetcar will encounter a variety of mixed-use density from just about every decade of the city's modern history. from newer Biden-era construction to older Hoover-era residential density. I've always said that Portland's 21st and 23rd Avenues comprise one of the best neighborhoods for urbanists in the US. This isn't new urbanism, nor old urbanism, but the best of both worlds. Implementing 21st century streetcars along a 19th century streetcar corridor is something that every city in this country should be doing. As it continues north, the new streetcar will encounter some of that commercial infrastructure left over from Portland's original streetcar line that once served 23rd Avenue as early as 1892. The new streetcar extension will serve a growing number of locals and tourists that can always be found buzzing around the ever-trendy Nob Hill neighborhood. The place is packed with shopping, dining, neighborhood amenities, recreation, job centers. It's really a jack of all trades, and a master of a few, particularly its reliance on adaptive reuse. Naturally, the first stop on the new extension is at 23rd and Raleigh, so a shelter will have to be built right around here to accommodate for it. It's such an ideal location for a stop too, since it'll give riders direct and easy access to Slabtown, arguably the city's best up-and-coming urbanist neighborhood today. As much as this extension is focused on Montgomery Park and the future redevelopment therein, I also get the feeling that it'll be just as useful for the folks living in the new density popping up in Slabtown too. As the streetcar continues north up 23rd Avenue, the fun just about ends as it reaches Vaughn Street, at an intersection that will see the streetcar meet the on and off ramps for US Highway 30. While currently this is a pretty car-centric industrial edge intersection, the city intends to improve pedestrian and cyclist safety as a part of the broader extension project, implementing safer crossings and protected bike lanes, as well as restructuring the neighborhood greenway signage and infrastructure in the surrounding auxiliary side streets. But not only does the extension call for the rehabbing of pre-existing streetscape, it also calls for the construction of a few new roads altogether. See, Roosevelt Street, where the streetcar is planned to make its westbound approach into Montgomery Park, is actually incomplete. The adopted outline has the streetcar continuing down Roosevelt until 26th Avenue, but once you approach 24th Avenue, there's no road, rail, or infrastructure at all. Just a chain-link fence protecting this undeveloped dirt. Previously, this now vacant land was home to the Esco Company's headquarters and steel foundry. In fact, the metal manufacturer was founded at this site all the way back in 1913, where it remained until 2018 when the company was acquired by an overseas corporation and its foundry was demolished. Until very recently, the Esco site was zoned as industrial/employment, but as of the Montgomery Park area plan's adoption in December of 2024, Portland City Council voted unanimously to establish a new mixed-use zoning distinction here, allowing for commercial, residential, and office space to flourish alongside the streetcar extension. This is fantastic, and it wouldn't even be the first time the city has done this exact same thing. See, throughout the 2010s, the land that was once used for the Conway Company's logistics operations has given way to a sustainable, new urbanism project that is Slabtown. The city rezoned and redeveloped this entire area of what was previously for industrial use and surface parking only. It's since created a beautiful, pedestrian-friendly streetscape inspired by the streets of Amsterdam and Copenhagen, in the words of the Urban Land Institute at least. While it may not have the comprehensive protected bike infrastructure or organic lived-in feel of neighborhoods in the aforementioned cities, I still believe it's been, by all measures, a very successful undertaking, providing new housing options for hundreds, if not thousands of Portlanders. According to the adopted Montgomery Park area plan, in total, about 17.5 acres of land previously zoned for industrial use will be redeveloped into the new mixed-use Montgomery Park TOD subdistrict. The redevelopment will support over 2,000 new housing units, including affordable housing, alongside new commercial and employment spaces. As the streetcar continues westbound down the soon-to-be-built section of Roosevelt Street, it will make a stop at 25th Street in front of a lucky, to-be-determined building that will surely be constructed as the redevelopment takes shape. Roosevelt Street is part of the one-way couplet alongside Wilson Street in the planned extension, which will also have a stop going eastbound between 26th and 27th Avenue, before continuing all the way south back to where we started. Of course, not all of Portland's Northwest Industrial District is going to be redeveloped. The city has stood firm on its commitment to preserve the ongoing industrial activity located adjacent to Montgomery Park. In this area to the north, a part of the city referred to in the literature as the Guilds Lake Industrial Sanctuary. I kept reading about this Guilds Lake as I was researching for this video, but after visiting and looking all over for a lake or a body of water of some kind, I just couldn't find anything. And that's because, strangely, there is no Guilds Lake. At least not anymore. See, there was a huge lake here at one time, as recently as the early 1900s, and it spanned the area of this map I highlighted in blue, including parts of Montgomery Park. In fact, the proximity of the lake to the Northern Pacific Railroad and the Spokane, Portland, and Seattle Railway, and other regional railroads and nearby docks, made it very attractive for industrial development beginning in the late 1800s. But what even local Portlanders may not know is that Guilds Lake and the surrounding land was, at one point, the site of the Lewis and Clark Centennial Exposition. This fair, held from June to October of 1905, had more than 400 temporary buildings, with pavilions from different states and countries, plus turn-of-the-century exhibits about industry, culture, and Pacific trade. Over 1.6 million people attended, which very much helped raise Portland's reputation as a growing West Coast city. When the fair ended, the buildings were torn down and the lake area was drained and filled, paving the way for the industrial development that came next, and has been there ever since. Fascinating, isn't it? I almost can't believe that I was walking around the grounds of yet another one of America's forgotten city beautiful expos. I mean, just look at the sheer geographical extent of this thing. It was huge, almost like the size of a small town, and now it's just gone forever, without anything around here letting you know what was once here. And believe it or not, there's even more to the area's history. In 1901, on a parcel adjacent to the 1905 exposition, a baseball stadium was constructed on land that is now part of the vacant Esco Site. At first, the baseball stadium was nothing more than a neighborhood ballpark for the factory workers that worked around here, but over time, it expanded to fit 12,000 seats at its height, and was later officially named Vaughn Street Park. Until 1955, it was the home of the Portland Beavers of the Pacific Coast Baseball League, and the Portland Colts of the Northwest Baseball League. It was even used for exhibition MLB games from the 1920s to the 1940s, and saw teams such as the New York Yankees, the Cleveland Indians, and the Chicago White Sox. But when the land became just too valuable to pass up, Esco purchased the ballpark and demolished it in order to expand their adjacent industrial facilities. It's really unfortunate that that had to happen, but I do take solace in knowing that the apartments, food halls, and whatever else takes shape here during the redevelopment will absolutely use the area's baseball history in their branding. So be prepared for luxury apartment buildings to pop up with names like The Dugout, or The Infield at Roosevelt, or Left Field Landing. You just know it's bound to happen. With a pun absolutely intended, I do think the city would have had a home run on its hands if it decided to play up that history and rebrand the area as the Ballpark Historic District or something. But there's just one little thing standing in the way of that idea. The current namesake for the neighborhood's new identity, the Montgomery Park building itself. This place was built in 1920 for Montgomery Ward & Company, an American mail-order business and department store chain that operated between 1872 and 2001. The building has 9 floors, a mezzanine, and a basement, with upper floors primarily used for warehouse space, while the second and third floors were used for offices and mail order functions. The first floor handled freight loading, with rail spurs actually extending all the way into the building itself. And it turned out that the area around the building was still littered with leftover train tracks even today, which was pretty cool to see. In 1936, Montgomery Ward added a mezzanine and a retail space on the second and third floors, and it was very successful for a few years. However, by the years after World War II, the store's business declined due to competition from suburban shopping malls. Today, that retail mezzanine is actually being used as an employee store for Adidas, since the building is now home to an extension of Adidas's North American headquarters and corporate offices. But what about that iconic sign though? In all of these historical photos, that sign on top of the Montgomery Ward and Company building reads, well, Montgomery Ward and Company. So what happened? In 1984, the building was sold to the Norcrest China Company, a Portland property development corporation owned by the notoriously frugal Portland businessman Bill Naito. Naito wanted a complete rebranding of the building as a part of its remodeling into a place that was able to host trade shows and banquet halls. Though Naito didn't want to get rid of the sign completely, but instead wanted to turn it into something new and fresh. So, get this, he settled on renaming it Montgomery Park because it was the cheapest option overall. All Naito needed to do was replace the W and D of Ward with a P and a K to spell out Park, and the rest is history. A year after the Montgomery Ward building was built, another corporate complex was constructed adjacent to it, this one to house the Northwest operations of the American Can Company. Coincidentally, right after I went to Portland, I took a trip down to San Francisco while editing this video, and I happened to stumble upon another industrial complex for the American Can Company too, which just goes to show how big this company's operations really were back in the day. And they still have many warehouses and industrial complexes still standing across American cities today. The American Can Company used this Portland facility for over 60 years to produce tin cans for the regional food packing industry. At its peak, the plant employed up to 800 workers and produced upwards of 1.5 million cans daily. The site continued operations through the Great Depression and World War II, but ceased manufacturing in 1959, with the complex later being repurposed for warehousing until 1972 when it was fully closed. After 1972, half of the complex was repurposed into a parking structure for the Montgomery Ward building. The American Can Company complex, along with the Montgomery Park building, are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So while I was exploring the site, it was so clear to me that the Montgomery Park area has a ton of potential for adaptive reuse. And I'm happy to report that the city has already adopted a design drawn up by the Lake Flato firm that calls for a complete reimagining of the two landmark properties. There's a ton in here, and it doesn't even include the redevelopment in and around the Esco property, but I'll do my best to show you what the city wants to do with this part of the neighborhood in the near future. We can see that the large surface lot on the west end of the Montgomery Park building is slated to be replaced with at least 2 mixed-use residential towers, along with a community center that they're calling the Trailhead Lodge. One of the best parts about this area's new urbanist renaissance is the fact that it means even more Portlanders will have direct and easy access to the abundance of trails that make up the city's Forest Park, one of the largest urban green spaces in North America, right in Montgomery Park's backyard. The Trailhead Lodge will be a sort of community amenity, with a bar, a lounge, a cafe, a spa, and I'm sure a few other things too. The 2 mixed-use apartment buildings themselves will surround a local third place in the form of a new public square. The design actually calls for the new park to be connected with the Lower Macleay trailhead via a pedestrianized pathway of some sort, so I'm interested to see how that will look upon completion too. A huge part of what the design is calling its West Zone is the complete redesign of traffic flow in order to make these new side streets safe for pedestrians and cyclists, but also to give cars access to the new underground parking garages. The Montgomery Park building is getting an overhaul of its own, with the addition of a rooftop penthouse and the adaptive reuse of its former freight loading dock into a new food hall. The office space will remain if they're able to fill it, but if they can't for whatever reason, I suggest that it too be converted into housing. The American Can Company complex is also seeing a few changes, mostly with the complete overhaul of its parking structure. Currently, the parking structure is taking up a lot of space here, but that's going to change in the near future. It seems like it will be split into 2, with the west end being converted into yet another public square, as well as a venue capable of hosting either a public market or a weekly farmers market. And it looks like the eastern half will be converted back into a mix of office and retail space. The now vacant landmark office building will remain an office building, and the complex's surface lot will be converted into mixed-use housing. Keep in mind, all of this is less than half of the land earmarked for development, which is crazy. Hopefully, all of this new transit-oriented development will bring a lasting identity to a part of the city that's never really been able to form one, on account of how constantly it's been changing over the past 100 plus years. The Montgomery Park area plan, though, seems like the beginning of a final form, a new yet unshakable foundation for lasting and sustainable new urbanism. So far, the Portland Bureau of Transportation has committed $12 million from its Streetcar Reserve Fund toward project development activities, earmarked for engineering, design, and environmental planning. This is in conjunction with the Federal Transit Administration's 2018 award of a $1.07 million planning grant in order to support evaluation of alignments and preliminary engineering work. The much larger capital cost of the project, estimated at a total of $178 million, remains unsecured. But full funding is anticipated through future federal grants, regional transportation programs, local improvement districts, and other sources, like the aforementioned Streetcar Reserve Fund. The Portland Bureau of Transportation is expected to actively pursue a federal capital investment grant in 2026, which would supply a significant share of the project's construction funding. Construction on the streetcar extension project is slated to begin around 2028, with revenue service earmarked to launch by the year 2030, provided funding is in place. All of this looks, feels, and sounds great. Portland continues moving the needle and remains firmly positioned at the forefront of American new urbanism. If cities of similar size like Nashville, Vegas, Tucson, and Baltimore could catch up, we'd be living in such a different America as far as new urban living is concerned. I mean, the snowball has to start somewhere, right? But I will say this. I believe that the city's ability to build a vibrant future truly depends on learning from its past missteps and committing to public spaces where people genuinely feel safe, welcome, and connected. As I explored the Montgomery Park area, the potential for transformative urbanism was clear, but so too were the challenges. Open-air drug use, visible disorder, and an underlying sense that people currently avoid this area because they simply do not feel safe. And that's a problem that's plagued Portland for years. Portland is such a beautiful city with world-class urbanist credentials, yet transit and infrastructure alone cannot rebuild trust in the urban core. That requires consistent law enforcement, a shared commitment to public decency, and a renewed sense of community among neighbors. If Portland can restore that foundation of law and order and mutual respect, its investments in transit-oriented development will not just shape streets and buildings, but will reconnect people to the city they call home. And that's really what I'm advocating for every week on this channel. But what do you think about the planned streetcar extension? Do you think the city should have focused on adding a streetcar service somewhere else entirely? Or are you just glad to see yet another underutilized industrial district get its own TOD makeover? Personally, while I do think there are other parts of the city ripe for streetcar expansion, I do think the city's way of approaching streetcar expansion to drive overall urban renewal and infill is the right move for now. But let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads. I'll see you next week from 4th place.